Here is a pattern I see constantly. A founder identifies a problem. She goes to the internet, which is always a very calm and measured place to bring a business concern, and she says, "My sales have slowed down." Within 90 minutes, she has been diagnosed with inconsistent content, weak messaging, low visibility, a broken funnel, subconscious fears of success, and possibly a dysregulated nervous system. She came in with one symptom. She left with a new CRM, content calendar, 3 masterclasses, and the belief that she is the reason none of this is working. So she applies the advice, she posts more, she rewrites her website, she changes the offer, she tightens her boundaries, she hires support. The problem either stays exactly where it was or it moves to a different part of the business and she spends the next 6 months chasing it. Then, this is the part that stays with me, she decides that she did something wrong. She thinks she did not execute well enough. She thinks she lacks discipline. She thinks everyone else has it figured out to make the strategy work, and she is the one strange exception who can apparently turn a proven framework into a crime scene. So, she did not necessarily do something wrong, did she? She may have been given a perfectly good prescription for a problem that, guess what, she does not have. Welcome to The Line to Edit. I'm Veronica Dietz, founder of Taiki Digital Agency, diagnostic strategist, and growth advisor. This is the show where we look at the patterns keeping smart founders stuck and name them clearly enough that you cannot unsee them. This is the Aligned Edit. Let's edit the noise and look at what's actually happening. I have been inside enough businesses to know how quickly a visible problem becomes the official explanation. A founder tells me her website's not converting. That sounds like a website problem, and sometimes it is. Sometimes the website is slow, it's confusing, it's outdated, difficult to navigate, and it's asking the visitor to click 4 buttons, and they all seem to lead into different dimensions. We can fix that, but sometimes I start asking questions and realize that the website is doing a remarkably accurate job of communicating a business that has not made a decision. There are 4 audiences, 7 offers, 3 different descriptions of what the founder does, a premium service beside a low-cost membership, beside a course she had created 2 years ago and doesn't even understand why no one's buying it because she doesn't even like it anymore. The homepage is not confused because the copywriter failed. The homepage is confused because the business is confused. A new headline is not going to resolve that. It might hide it for 3 weeks. It might feel good after you change it. It might sound fantastic on Instagram. It might even make everybody on the team, including you, the founder, feel productive. But eventually, the buyer reaches the same unresolved decision the business has been avoiding. So, who is this for? What am I buying? Why this option? Why now? And why does every button appear to be asking me to enter a different business? That is the difference between treating a symptom and diagnosing the structure producing it. So the symptom says the website is not converting. The diagnosis may be the business has not decided what it wants the website to convert people into. Those are not the same problem, and they do not require the same work. But the market prefers the first one because fix your website conversion is easier to package than we need to sit down and confront 6 business decisions you have been postponing. And that is because a website designer, a copywriter, someone who can build you a gorgeous, functional website is a dime a dozen. Someone who can actually sit with you, look at your business, hear between the words that you're saying what is actually the problem of the conversion, what is actually preventing you from attracting the right clients on your site and actually converting them into clients, into paying clients. That is not a dime a dozen. That is actually very rare to find. And the ones that are out there, the few of us that are out here really getting into the depth of your business, are very expensive. So I digress. The market prefers that first one because it's easier to package and it sounds like a deliverable that's easy to sell. And you've purchased it. It's easy to invest in that. It makes sense. And then the other one sounds like, oh shit, it's just a Wednesday afternoon fun chit chat that's going to take a real personal turn. But that's not what's happening. There is an entire economy built on giving founders answers before anyone has established the right question. And it's not because everyone selling advice is dishonest. Advice can be useful. Frameworks can be useful. Courses can be useful. I have created strategies, frameworks, audits, plans, recommendations, and enough documents to personally keep Google Drive employed. The problem is the order. Fast, recognizable, packageable prescriptions are what the market rewards. Diagnosis is slower. It requires context. It requires someone to listen long enough to notice the founder's first explanation might not be the actual explanation. And founders do arrive with an explanation. We all do. We show up saying, I need more visibility. I need help delegating. I need to fix my messaging. I need to be more consistent. I need to be better at the sales process. Okay, maybe, but those are all conclusions. They are not necessarily diagnosis. And I understand why founders want to arrive with the answer already partially assembled. It feels efficient. It feels responsible. It is much easier to say, I need a content strategy than to say something is not working and I cannot see the full shape of it and I no longer trust my interpretation. It was even hard for me to just say it right now. Like, that is much harder to say as a business owner, as a founder, as someone who is the decision maker for the future of something you're building. The second sentence just requires so much more vulnerability. The first one really lets you just shop and explore and lightly touch what's possible. So the market built shelves, a shelf for visibility, a shelf for messaging, a shelf for burnout, a shelf for sales, a shelf for leadership, a shelf for money beliefs. You walk in with a symptom, locate that correct aisle, and purchase something with 6 modules and a private Facebook group or school. The business still feels wrong, and now you also have so much homework. Your workload just tripled. For the prescription economy to work at scale, problems have to be recognizable. They have to fit inside categories. And once the market finally gets the language for a pattern, the language spreads fast. I have watched this in real time. You can spend years talking about the diagnosis, the symptoms, the structural problems, and load-bearing issues while almost nobody knows what to do with it. Then suddenly the vocabulary is everywhere. And no, I don't own the English language, and no, we're not going to blame AI and ChatGPT for this. That's not the point. The point is the language travels faster than the capability. So people learn how to say, that is only a symptom, before they know how to trace the symptom back to the structure producing it. They can repeat the diagnosis. They cannot always sit with the 5 problems that appear unrelated, find the decision connecting them, and show the founder where the loop actually started. That is the lag in thought leadership. First, the language gets ignored, then it gets repeated, then the market starts packaging it, but diagnosis is not a vocabulary set. It is the ability to tell the difference between what looks familiar and what is actually happening. And the categories are not fake. Inconsistent sales can be a content problem. Exhaustion can be a boundaries problem. Weak conversion can be a messaging problem. Resentment can be a mindset problem. Capacity strain can be a delegation problem. Sometimes the obvious answer is the answer. The issue is that the symptom and the cause often look similar from the outside. A founder who does not post consistently may need a content system, or she may need to disappear from marketing every time a client delivery becomes busy because the business cannot market and serve at the same time. That is not a content calendar problem. She can build the most beautiful Notion dashboard anyone has ever ignored. The business still has no usable rhythm. A founder who is exhausted may need stronger boundaries, or she may have priced her services so low that profitability requires too many clients, each receiving more access than the fee could support. So now she's trying to use her boundary script to create a math problem. A founder whose team keeps interrupting her may need to delegate more clearly, or she may have hired people without assigning actual decision ownership. Every task technically belongs to someone else. Every consequence still belongs to her. That is not delegation. That is being copied on your own captivity. A founder whose audience is not converting may need clearer messaging, or the audience may understand her perfectly well and still have no compelling reason to buy the thing she's offering. Clarity does not create demand when demand does not exist. You can communicate an unwanted offer with breathtaking precision. That symptom is real. The assigned cause may not be. I want to implicate myself here because it would be very convenient to make this an episode about everybody else giving bad advice. I work in strategy. I came through marketing and brand work. I know how easy it is to look at a problem and reach for the tool you know how to use. When you know websites, the website starts looking suspicious. When you know content, every business needs a content strategy. When you know nervous system work, guess what? Every founder is dysregulated. When you know hiring, every capacity problem needs a team member. When you know mindset, every unresolved business issue starts developing a limiting belief. We are all vulnerable to confusing what we know with accuracy. I have had to learn not to enter a conversation already attached to the thing I know how to fix, because sometimes the correct answer does not validate my service. Sometimes the founder does not need more marketing. Sometimes she needs to stop selling the offer. Sometimes she does not need more traffic. She needs to fix what happens when people arrive. Sometimes she does not need a new team member. She needs to stop performing work that no longer belongs in the business. Sometimes the answer costs less than the solution she originally requested. Sometimes it requires more. Diagnosis does not exist to protect the provider's favorite prescription. It exists to clarify the problem. And that sounds obvious until accuracy threatens the sale. This gets confusing because the wrong prescription can still produce a result. So the new content plan increases reach. The revised messaging improves the homepage. The assistant takes 5 tasks off the founder's plate, and the retreat helps her rest. Something gets better, but the larger problem still remains. The partial improvement is enough to convince her that the diagnosis was correct. So when the issue returns, she assumes she failed to maintain the solution. She did not stay consistent. She stopped enforcing the boundary. She failed to follow the process. She did not train the assistant correctly. Sometimes execution is the issue, but relief is not proof that the cause was identified. A vacation can restore energy without changing the structure consuming it. A new hire can create breathing room without changing the system that routes every meaningful decision back to the founder. A messaging update can improve understanding without fixing an offer that was difficult to buy. A sales spike can reduce pressure without changing the model creating the pressure. The prescription may soften the symptoms. That does not mean it changed what it produced. This is how founders become extremely informed and remain completely stuck because they know all the language. They can explain funnels, or at least most of us can, and some of us are still a little confused on that. We can explain our nervous system regulation, our positioning, buyer psychology, delegation, automation, energetics, conversation with conversions, and probably their human design authority or their big three in astrology. They have learned enough vocabulary to host a panel. The business is still eating them alive. And not because they have failed to learn, but because every new tool has been applied to the wrong level of the problem. The financial cost matters. Founders spend thousands of dollars buying solutions that never had a chance of resolving the actual issue. But the deeper cost is what happens to their self-trust. They do not say the framework was built for a different business. They say, I never follow through. They would not say, we solved the wrong problem. They would take ownership and say, I sabotaged everything. They do not say, the strategy required conditions my business does not have. The founder would say, I must be afraid of success. Maybe you are afraid of success, or maybe the strategy was bad for you. We do have to leave room for ordinary incompatibility. Every failed strategy is not a portal into your deepest subconscious wound. Sometimes you bought a course from someone with a completely different business model and you tried to bolt it onto yours like it was an aftermarket car part. And guess what? It did not fit. The prescription economy turned structural mismatch into personal failure. It tells us founders to improve execution before confirming that the strategy deserves to be executed. It tells us to become more disciplined inside a business that has no rhythm. It tells us to delegate work that should just really be eliminated. And it tells us to communicate more clearly without asking whether the business has made a clear decision on what we should be communicating. It tells us to regulate ourselves enough to remain functional inside a structure that we should be questioning. So eventually, the founder, us founders, have 12 attempted corrections attached to one unidentified problem. It's a new funnel, a new assistant, a new CRM, a new offer, content plan, a morning routine, a pricing structure, better affirmations, a sales script, a website, a niche. It's a lot. It's always a new belief that the business would work beautifully if we could just stop being the weakest part of it. I'm going to tell you right now, you may not be the weakest part. You may be the person compensating for everything that was never properly designed. So, diagnosis is not simply asking more questions. It is knowing what the questions are trying to separate. What is loud? What is load-bearing? What changed before the symptom appeared? Where else does this pattern show up? What has already been tried? What did improve? What's remained? What does the founder keep compensating for? What part of the business only works because she continues absorbing the consequence? That last question, that tells you a lot. A founder may think she has 3 separate problems. She cannot market consistently. She's exhausted by delivery. She cannot increase sales without panicking over capacity. Those may be 3 symptoms attached to one offer. The offer requires so much customization that she disappears whenever she sells it. She cannot market without delivering it. She cannot increase volume without increasing her workload. She cannot hire easily because the value lives inside her judgment. Now we are somewhere useful. She does not need a content strategy, a self-care plan, a lead generation system. She needs to decide whether the offer can exist without requiring this version of her. That is a different conversation. It is also the conversation that changes more than one symptom at a time. The market loves asking, "What do you need?" Diagnosis asks, "What makes you think that is what you need?" Not to be difficult, not to make the founder defend herself, to understand how the conclusion was reached. Because sometimes she is right. Sometimes she needs the website. Sometimes she needs more visibility. Sometimes she needs to hire. Sometimes she needs to stop overthinking and execute the very obvious plan sitting in front of her. Diagnosis is not a demand that everything becomes deeper, darker, and more psychology complicated. The point is not to turn every content problem into an evacuation of your childhood. The point is to sequence, establish the problem, then prescribe. Do not prescribe because a symptom resembles something familiar. Do not prescribe because a solution is available. Do not prescribe because everyone else is selling it. And do not prescribe because the founder arrived already asking to buy it. The advice may be good. It may simply be prescribed for a problem you do not have. That's my whole thing. Before the next course, hire, strategy, rewrite, system, framework, retreat, rebrand, or extremely ambitious new Notion workspace, ask whether the right question has actually been established. Because the best answer to the wrong question is still the wrong answer. And applying it beautifully will not make it more accurate. If you've been applying sensible solutions and still ending up in the same loop, that is usually the signal. Not automatically that you are bad at execution, not automatically that you lack discipline, not automatically that you need to work harder on becoming the kind of person your business apparently requires. It may be the signal that nobody diagnosed the problem before they started handing you the answers. That is the work I do. I look at the issue that appears separate from the structure connecting them, and I help founders identify the decision that changes more than one symptom at a time. You can find out more at veronicadietz.com. Until then, talk soon.